Good morning, Viber friends. Welcome to another episode of the Knit, Knot, and Weave podcast. I am your host. My name is Dorothy, and I am coming to you from Columbia, Maryland. It has been a while since I've been here. I've had some family dealings. If you have seen my previous two episodes, I had spoken and shared about my dad's emergency hip replacement and I think I had mentioned that I had an emergency trip that I needed to make down to Florida. So it's been a little while, so I might be a little rusty. But anyway, welcome to my corner of the YouTube where I share and talk about my fibery adventures, be it knitting, crocheting, weaving, spinning, yarn dyeing, anything, any cracky rabbit hole that I tend to go down. So if this sounds like your cup of something special, grab yourself something to drink. I had my morning coffee in my little knitting kitty mug that my friend Joan gave me a number of years ago, and I can't remember if it was a Christmas gift or a birthday gift. And unfortunately, there is no name of who the potter is. But anywho, let's get started. No, let's not get started. Grab a cup of something to keep your oh my God, it's really been a long time. Grab a cup of something to keep your whistle wet, grab a project to keep your hands busy, and come and join me on my couch and let's talk all about the fiber fun. Thank you, friends. If you are a returning viewer, I so appreciate you coming back and visiting with me. And if you have just found this channel, welcome to the crazy. If this sounds like just your cup of tea, would you please go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you click that bell so you won't miss any future episodes when they come up. So it has been, I think, almost a month since my last podcast. Unfortunately, if I look like my eyes are wandering a little, it's because I could not turn off my notifications on my phone, and I record on my phone because my father is in town, and should anything happen, I need to be accessible. So I apologize ahead of time if I hesitate a little, if it seems like I am reading something, because I probably am, just making sure that I don't get an emergency text from my mom or my sister. So let's see, what do I have for you guys today? I have 7 finished objects to share with you, quite a number of whips, a few acquisitions from both the Frederick Fiber Festival that was just before the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. I'm going to be sharing some information about 2 workshops I took during the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. I will be catching you up on some life updates. I will be sharing acquisitions from the festival. So why don't we get started? So first off, I am going to share some life updates. If this is not your cup of tea and you are just here for the knitting, you can go down into the description box and you will see that I have chapters in my videos, and you can just scroll ahead and get to the knitting section and don't worry about this. So for those of you that are new, or for those of you that are returning, my father had to have emergency hip replacement on, I believe it was April 5th. Yes, April 5th. And then April 9th, he went into a rehab facility to try and strengthen up and recover from the surgery. My father also has onset dementia, so it's very difficult for him to continually do his exercises because he simply doesn't remember. I had not realized just how bad it was until I had spent 2 weeks with them down in Florida. Had some really good conversations with my mom, talking about, my treatment with dad, what's going on, just life issues that she really needs to start considering. So I went down because my dad was supposed to be released like a week later. And so I took a week off of work. As much as I complained about my school, my principal is very family oriented. He understood. He allowed, not that he could really deny it, but I took illness and family leave. First time I've ever done that in 25 years in the county. And I flew down to Florida on I think it was a Tuesday. Yes, it was Tuesday, it was right after Sheep and Wool, so it was May 6th, I think my flight was. No issues getting down there. Got down there, saw my parents. My mom picked me up. We went to the facility so I could see my dad. My dad was at La Posada rehab facility. Beautiful, beautiful facility. The nurses were extremely accommodating, very, very nice. A lot of them really took to my dad, which was nice. They all looked out for him because, like I said, he has onset dementia, and sometimes, a lot of times, he would get out of bed and try and walk on his own, or forget to get his walker, or take his walker and try to walk by himself in the hallway, which he was not allowed to do because obviously he is a fall risk, and I'm sure they didn't want him walking on his own because they probably feared being sued. So they were really cautious and looked out for him, which was really nice. They, when I got there, I heard all about how cute my parents were because my mom was there every single day with my dad, pretty much all day. She would come in the morning. She would, set him up with breakfast. If they didn't have him dressed already, she would dress him. She walked with him in the hallways several times a day. She would run home, maybe make some extra protein and veggies for him to eat during the day. The food at La Posada was good, thankfully. So my dad, my dad never complains about food. I think the only thing I've ever heard him say was yuck to porridge or oatmeal. But again, when I saw what it looked like, it was very, very watery. I would have said the same thing. But anywho, 1 month after his surgery, we were going to visit with his orthopedic surgeon. He was supposed to get cleared to fly. We know there's like a 4 to 6 week window where when you have hip replacement surgery, you are not supposed to fly because I think it's fear of blood clots and stuff like that. But 2 weeks after his surgery, no, 1 week after his surgery, they already had fears of minor blood clots in his leg, so they had immediately put him on a blood thinner. And that morning we were there, we had breakfast, or rather he had breakfast. He had not had a whole bunch of water to drink. They immediately, once his breakfast was done, they took him in for physical therapy. And then right after physical therapy, he was picked up to go to the doctor's office. It was a very warm and humid day. He unfortunately was wearing a button-down, it was a button-down shirt, but it was a bit heavier, so it's more of like a spring or early fall jacket type thing, and it was not very breathable. He started to sweat profusely while we were in the waiting room for the doctor. I saw his coloring, go gray. And my father is not as pale as I am. He is a sun lover, so he nor has a tan like year round because he's always out in the sun. And to see him go gray and to see him, sitting there in his wheelchair saying, "I don't feel good," and drooling was just, I think it took 10 years off my life because I thought maybe he was having a stroke or a heart attack or something. They called an ambulance. The paramedics came out. By the time they came out, he was feeling a little better. We got some water into him. So I think he had a dehydration episode where if you are dehydrated, you're out in the heat, your blood pressure tends to drop, and he has low blood pressure to begin with. So he was on the verge of passing out. He has had episodes like this in the past, but not frequently. I think he's had like 2 or 3, and there have been, spans of years between them. But this time, when the paramedics came out, they did an EKG, they did all the things, and they talked to us. They were like, he's 84 years old. All the reports that we were doing, he's fine, he's healthy. There's, nothing urgent. There's no heart attack, no stroke, nothing like that. He goes, but he is 84 years old, so I would still suggest bringing him to the hospital to have him checked out. So we went. We went to Palm Beach Medical Center. I do not recommend that hospital if you have an emergency situation. So we were in the ER room. My dad was hooked up, and every time he fell asleep, his heart rate would drop under 50 and the alarms would go off. So his heart was not beating enough to get brain all over his brain. Blood and oxygen through his body, and the nurse practitioner that was on duty was concerned. So they wanted to admit him and, just I could speak. They wanted to admit him so they could observe him overnight and just make sure that his heart rate was steady. And it was the worst 48 hours in a hospital I've ever had in my life. And I've had a couple of surgeries. He was admitted. We never saw a doctor that day. The next morning, we were back there at about 8:30 in the morning. The nurse that was on duty said that the rounds were done early that morning, that notes were in my dad's file at about, I don't know, 7:15 that morning. So it means he probably came around 6 or 6:30. They ordered a sonogram to be done on his arteries in his neck, and they ordered an echocardiogram to be done to check his heart. We left at about 7:30 that night. Not a single doctor came by. Not a single doctor, not a single nurse practitioner to tell us anything. So before we left, we were told that they, that morning they came, I think around 6 or 6:30. So we decided, all right, tomorrow morning we're going to go early because it's ridiculous. An 84-year-old man has had an emergency episode, and any doctor worth their degree, would talk to my father for 5 minutes and know that he was not very cognizant that he has, that there's something wrong and that he's not going to remember. And so maybe I should come back when family is here and speak with family. No, that didn't happen. So the next day we go out. I think we got there at about 6:15, 6:30. My dad was moved because, like I said, he tends to get up and want to walk around, and he's not supposed to. And so they did have a bed alarm on him, but he was way down at the other end from the nurse's station. So overnight they moved him right next door to the nurse's station. They had bed alarms on him, and they had him video monitored because he was getting out of bed so much. Sounds just like my dad. The nurse that I saw that morning, I asked if, the doctors had done rounds yet. And she said, oh, no, absolutely not. She's like, no doctors come this early. She's like, only us lowly nurses are on duty at, 5:45 in the morning. Shift change was happening at 7. And again, no doctor had come by. Lunch came and went. We saw no one. I was starting to freak out because this was my daddy. We weren't being told what happened, what was going on, where we were going from here. He was getting annoyed because he didn't know why he was there. Called my older sister and talked to her and, shared with her how I was really getting frustrated and I was going to lose it. And if I lost it, my mom was going to lose it. And if my mom lost it, my dad would start crying because I'm pretty positive he has mild depression. So I had to go hide in the bathroom to cry. And then I came back out. My sister called me. She talked to my cousin, who is a doctor in the and he informed me, he was like, ask for a patient advocate. They're the ones that are supposed to be telling you what's going on when you feel like you're not getting heard or the doctor's not seeing you or whatnot. So I was able to calm down after I got off the phone with him, except I asked for a patient advocate 4 times in 1 hour and no one ever came. They said, oh, we put in the request. Finally, I lost in the hallway. And I said, if you can't get a patient advocate here, then please get me a hospital. And I was not this calm when I was in the hospital. But I said, if a patient advocate can't get here, I said, you need to get me a hospital administrator because I have had enough. I said, my father has been here for almost 48 hours. We have not seen a doctor. We have not seen a nurse practitioner. I have asked the nurse several times who the attending doctors were that were on his chart. She never came back to tell me. Again, I said, I asked for a patient advocate 4 times and nobody has come out. I said, you need to get me somebody now. Lo and behold, when a crazy woman is screaming in the hallways, they finally found a cardiologist. How do you say her? She was a nurse practitioner for the cardiologist department. So a cardiac nurse practitioner. Anyway, she came out. She had a very calm demeanor. She was telling us what was going on, that, he was going to be released, it looked like. And so finally, we get told that his sonograms came back. They look good. And the fact that, before this incident happened, he was walking anywhere from 4 to 6 miles daily, whether it was in New York or in Florida. They came back and shared the results of the echocardiogram. His heart looked great, nothing unusual, nothing to be worried about or concerned about for his age. There was a little, I can't remember what they called it. I think it was backflow or something like that. But again, that is normal for, people who are in their 80s. But they released him, thank gosh, because then we were waiting for a pickup from the rehab facility. And so we had my dad sitting in a chair and he has lost a tremendous amount of weight since he retired. So he's always cold. So he was wrapped up in a blanket and he fell asleep on the chair. And just as we saw the gentleman coming with a wheelchair to pick him up, my mother called his name. And normally he wakes right up. He didn't wake up. My mom went over and shook him a little. He still didn't wake up. It was at that moment that mom and I turned to each other, and I think we were just both having the same panicked thought that he's not responding. And thankfully my mom shook him a little harder and he woke up, and mom and I were just like, I think we both like let out like the biggest sigh, because I'm sure we were both having the same thought at that point. So we got him back to La Posada. We ordered tickets. We gave my sister, who is in Maryland, and my niece, who is in Maryland, who is also a nurse, all kinds of information on my dad, because in the 2 weeks that I was down there, I managed to convince my mother it was in both of their best interests to come to Maryland after leaving Florida. My sister has an in-law suite in her house that's on the main floor with the kitchen and dining room and all that stuff and living room, so that my dad wouldn't have to do stairs on a daily basis. Although they had been doing stairs with him in PT, but they still didn't want him doing them on his own. And we didn't want my mother doing them with him because, God forbid, he tripped, fell, lost his balance. We would have two of them in a hospital bed. So I finally convinced her that she would have way more help in Maryland, because although my younger sister lives in New York, she has two school-aged kids that are big participants. One has a steady participation in field hockey year-round, and the other one has year-round swimming, competitions, lessons, all that stuff. So I am home. I have no kids. My sister is can work from home a lot of times. My brother-in-law is retired. My niece is home. She is a nurse. My other niece is home. So mom would have way more help with dad than if she went to New York. So my niece set him all up with his PT, and we are just making sure that he walks 3 or 4 times a day to get that leg moving. So that has pretty much been my month. Talk about technically three very stressful weeks, because not only was I there for 2 weeks, it took about a good week for everything to get settled here, make sure we had PT, make sure he had what he needed. So my dad is doing better. He is walking much better. We need to build up his stamina. We need to get him to do longer walks, but he can be very stubborn now that he is no longer in the facility. He thinks that I walk, I don't need to do exercises. I walk, I'm perfectly fine. Thankfully, what I have seen is a huge improvement in his cognition, because he is constantly being stimulated here. He has way more people to engage with and interact with. So I feel like he's definitely becoming more like his old self. So we are in the process of trying to convince my mother to sell her house in New York and move down to Maryland, where he can get more stimulation. Very, very difficult situation. I feel like sometimes, even though they've been here for 2 weeks now, I haven't been able to fully process and decompress from the whole situation. And I know that sounds weird because I'm back home, but I'm not here full time still. I go to work. After work, I go to my sister's house. If the physical therapy had not visited, I basically don't take no for an answer from my dad. I get the weights out and I start doing them with him. Excuse me. And he jokes around. He thinks it's a big joke at first. Then I, try to get serious with him without, being too harsh. But between me and my niece, Gabriella, the one who's a nurse, we get him to do his exercises at least 4 or 5 times a week. The physical therapist comes out twice a week. So we make sure to get him to do it at least 2 or 3 more times, aside from all the walking that my parents get done. So I try to go over after work some days to give my sister and brother-in-law a break, because my brother-in-law, like I said, is retired, so he's home all day with them. And so I still don't have my life totally back in order. But that has been going on for, like I said, 4 weeks now, because I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit the stand. So, anywho, that is where I've been. Let's see, what else can I tell you? I went to right before I went down to Florida, I went to the Frederick Fiber Festival. I'm very proud of myself. I did not buy any yarn. I did buy a little bit of fiber, which I will share in acquisitions. Then I went to the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. I went on Saturday. I did not go back Sunday in the rain. I also took 2 workshops. I took one workshop was Friday and one was Saturday afternoon. One was dyeing and one was spinning. And I enjoyed it immensely. And I will talk about that more, I guess, when we get to acquisitions. So without further ado, that is my life update. So let's move on to the fun yarning stuff. So first off, what I am wearing the, what is this called? The Scrappy Granny Tee. I made this last summer. So it's gotten a good amount of wear in the summertime. I'm looking at my computer because I don't have my notes. The Scrappy Granny Tee by Emily Marie Davies. By the way, if I didn't say this at the beginning, everything I talk about, everything I share will be in the show notes below. If you would like to find me out on the interwebs anywhere, I will flash where you can find me over here. And I think that's all I need to share at this point, right? Show notes below. I already talked about liking and subscribing and thanking you guys for being here. Okay, yes, so this is the Scrappy Granny Tee. I made it with a cotton that I had from AC Moore. It was Stitch Studio by Nicole, which is the AC Moore brand. Unfortunately, AC Moore went out of business quite a number of years ago. And this was one skein, and it was 1,093 yards, and I used the whole skein. I did make, if I remember correctly, I did make some adjustments. I had to split for the sleeves. I think I wound up knitting a size or 2 down, because the first time it was just way too big. The second time I hadn't decreased enough, and the third time it finally worked. I think if I make this again with this thin cotton, I would probably go down a hook size, because this was made with a 4.25 millimeter hook, which is a USG. So that is what I'm wearing. I absolutely love it. The best part is it's cotton, so I can throw it in the washing machine. Yes, I put it inside a lingerie bag because the last thing I want is any snags in it, but super easy to take care of. Now, moving on. A few things that I have finished. One is, this is the simple scarf. It still needs to be blocked, and unfortunately when I block it, I am going to have to really block it. The pattern calls for, I want to say the pattern calls for like between 210 and 270 yards of DK weight, and I used Willy Wonka, which is a DK weight superwash merino nylon cashmere blend, and it has 235 yards. So I thought this would be enough, and I'd be able to leave it, squishy. This was literally all that I had left. I used a 4.5 millimeter needle, and unfortunately it is not quite long enough unless I block it, or unless I want to wear it like right up against my neck. So I think if I tied a knot here, I would feel like I was choking, but I could like put a decorative pin, and it almost feels like a cowl, so you don't really get to see how it increases and decreases in the center here. But since it is superwash, once I actually block it, it should grow a little. The edges are surprisingly pretty stretchy in this yarn base, even though it's an I-cord edging. I did not make any extra I-cords for the edge because it was knit. It was included in the pattern. It was not an afterthought I-cord edge. But it's very pretty. The colorway, the colorway is Grey Goose. And the wool is Willy Wonka. This is a very deep stash that I found when I was going through my yarn. So that's one. Next up is a shawl that has been on my needles for a very long time. It was a test knit, and when the test knit pattern came out, the yardage was just a little off. I made mine with Malabrigo Silky Merino, which is a discontinued yarn, but I had it in my stash. I had the colorway Deep, Leaf Silver, and Calligraphy. And had she had the correct yardage, I would have used calligraphy more as the main color because I used deep blue was more the main color and I ran out. So I wound up finishing the yarn with just the silver and the calligraphy. But it is super, super drapey. It was a very fun knit. This used approximately 615 yards. So let me see, Malabrigo Silky Merino is 205 yards. So it uses 3 colors. So 2 of the colors I had enough, which was 205 yards. The third color I needed just a little bit more. So if you have DK skeins that are about 215 to 220 yards each or more, you would only need 1 skein each. So very lovely, very simple pattern that uses all 3 colors. The silk, it's a 50-50 blend, so the silk makes it just absolutely drapey, cozy. I just love it. The nice long tail allows you to do a little knot here, so you could wear it as a accessory, or you could pull it a little tighter and wear it under your coat. But this was an enjoyable knit. I think I definitely will be making another with 3 high contrast yarns. The calligraphy and the leaf, the silver leaf or the leaf green, are very, very light. So unless you're really up close, you can barely see the difference. But again, this was a fun knit, easy to follow, easily memorizable directions or stitch. You just needed to, once you got into the rhythm, you would remember how many rows were done in each color section so that you'd be able to switch on your own. I don't think it's all that important to switch the colors when they say in the pattern. I think if you want to be a little bit more creative, you could go for it and switch colors after a pattern repeat anywhere you wanted. You could make it more stripy. You could always make it in just 2 simple colors. Very, very fun, very great knit. It took me quite a while to do this because that was what I was going to. I ran out of the deep and I was trying to look on Ravelry because, you know, this was a test knit. So I wanted to follow the directions as they were written. I found somebody who was selling a skein of their deep in the silk merino from Madeline Tosh. I don't know why I kept saying Malabrigo. Madeline Tosh Silk Merino, which is a 50-50 blend that is discontinued. So I purchased the skein of deep that somebody was selling. Unfortunately, when it came in, it looked like a totally, totally different color. This deep feels like it's more of a deep royal blue, whereas the deep that I got from someone stashed off of Ravelry was more of a, it wasn't as bright, so I guess it was more of a dark denim blue. You know, I know there are, having dyed yarn, I know that there are slight variations when you are talking about hand dyed yarn, but I mean, this looked like a completely different color blue. So I don't know if it was mislabeled somewhere, but when it didn't come out, when it didn't arrive and it wasn't the same color, I let the, what am I thinking of? I let the designer know that I wouldn't be able to finish it because I ran out of yarn. I believe she adjusted the yardage in the pattern, and then I just went ahead and finished with the colors that I had. So that is 2 finished objects that are finished. That was brilliant English, Dorothy. 2 finished objects that are finished. Can you tell my brain is not all there? So what is my next finished object? My next finished object is an emotional support chicken. Now, this is my 3rd one. This was the very first one I made. I bought the kit from Knitting Tree LA, and this is Dolly Parton, I believe was the kit that I purchased. You can see she is very, very overstuffed, and the stitches are very, very loose because I followed the pattern exactly. Then they came out with the crochet pattern, so I grabbed a whole bunch of scraps, acrylic scraps that I had in my stash, and I crocheted. What am I trying to say? Oh my God, my brain. Menopause brain is so real, folks. I crocheted the crochet version of the emotional support chicken. I don't know if I like it any better. I don't know if I'll be making any more of the crochet pattern ones, but it is finished. It will be put into my media center for kids to hug and whatnot. And then we were one of the other knitting groups that I am in, the one that I shared I was doing Blackout Bingo with, decided to have a chicken knit along. So I decided to make another emotional support chicken, the knitted variety. But this time I went down needle size. I believe the original called for size a US 8, which is a 5.0 millimeter needle. I decided that I was going to go down to a US 5, which is a 4 point, no. If an 8 is a 5, 6.5 millimeter, no. What am I thinking? 5, 4.5, 4, 3.5, 3.5 or 4 millimeter needle. My brain is not working this morning. And since tomorrow starts Pride Month, I decided to make a Pride chicken. Yes, I mimicked the person who made these and was highlighted on Ravelry. I contacted her and asked her if she would mind. She said, obviously, no. So I made my own little Pride chicken. I have not named her yet. If anybody can think of a good name for her, let me know. So I went down to, like I said, I went down to a US 5. So she is a bit smaller than the, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to cover my mouth. She's a bit smaller than the original, but it's a much tighter knit. So I feel like I could overstuff this, and I probably should have added more stuffing without worrying about seeing the stuffing through the stitches. So I absolutely love this. So this is the full LGBTQIA plus flag. It's got all the colors on the neck. So the neck is just slightly longer. And then I just did the rainbows around the body. I had sewn up, I had put in the eyes, put everything on, sewn up most of the bottom before I just started stuffing it. And this will also be going to live in my media center, especially this Monday with the start of Pride Month. If I shouldn't say if, I'm planning to make more for my media center, and I will continue to make them in with the smaller needle, to make them on a smaller gauge, because I like the tighter fabric. This one just feels, she was really squished. So she's very big and squishy, and I love her. But I feel like the kids could easily pick in or stick something in a toothpick or something and start pulling the stuffing out. So I do have another kit from Knitting Tree LA. I don't remember for the life of me which one it was that I purchased. But this I used Encore wool. So it's a wool acrylic blend. I have enough to make several more chickens because you use very, very little, obviously, of the colors that are in the rainbow flag. And if you have a name for her, if you have a cute name for her, please put it in the comments below. And actually, if you have a name for this one, you could put it in the comments below. Just let me know which the crochet chicken name and the Pride chicken name. I think these are so fun. I think this might be, hoping to get maybe 2 or 3 more done over the summer. We'll see what happens. And that is all I have. No, it is not all I have. Blah, blah, blah. So, before I went to Florida, I pulled out my circular sock knitting machine. I have a Speedster from Erlbacher. And I grabbed a bunch of yarns that were leftovers that had anywhere from 40 or more grams left over. Most of them were probably between 40 and 55 grams. And I just cranked a big long tube, and I will put a picture here that you could see. I think I made 2 of them. I did this because I was pretty positive I would not have the brain power while I was in Florida dealing with everything to do much more than round and round we go, circular knitting, adding, toes, heels, and cuffs. So that is what I did. I made a super, super long sock tube. I followed the inspiration from Michael of Piece for Piece Crafting, and I put a inch or so of waste yarn between each colorway, and I just went to cranking. I then matched up minis, or if I had solid full skeins, I matched up what I wanted to use for each one. And I made a giant roll like this. So you could see there's a mini here, and that went with this sock. There's a mini here, and that's going to go with this sock. And so that's how I packaged it to put in my travel case to come down to Florida. It was probably about this big by the time I had all the minis in there. So I will share which ones are fully finished. Some I did. So basically what I did is as I pulled them apart, I put on toes and cuffs. And once I had a number of them done, I decided who I would be giving them to, and then I figured out where to put the heel in. So I actually have a few Christmas gifts already done. So here was a leftover of, and I'm sorry, I'm still in the process of redoing my craft room, my yarn shoeary as I call it, and I have no idea where my sock lockers are, so I apologize. But I had exactly half a skein left over from, this is the Cozy Knitter Advent 2022. So it's 24 different colors on here. I had plenty of her undyed base. I must have bought extra minis or something. And so these will go to someone saying his or her name. And I really, really like the umbrella heel that Kay Jones created, or at least that's the pattern that is the designer that I purchased the umbrella heel pattern from. So I believe it is her creation. My family really liked it when I used it last year. Not last year, the year before, when I made them all Christmas socks. I feel like it really does cup the heel very well. And then I managed to find, I did not use it on this one. This one I did the regular, no, I did. I managed to find a rounded toe afterthought toe. So I started using that because I like the rounded toes better than the simple decreases. And so this was the first pair that I managed to complete. Then a number of years ago, Andy from the Naughty Knitress was doing a special episodes with color dyeing, and she had a couple of different dyers. We all agreed to dye a skein of yarn for her, using the same exact colors that we all agreed upon. And then she talked about how everybody used the same color, but we all created very, very different colored yarns. And then she was kind enough to crank us all a tube with the yarn that we sent her, and she sent it back to us. So this was my skein that I had dyed for her, and I was very pleased to see how it came out very, very even with all the speckling. And this is a number of years ago, I bought a bunch of solid 50-gram solid colored sock yarn from Hobie, in anticipation of having them on hand to do just this, heels, toes, and cuffs for socks. And so I found a purple in that little bag of colors, and I used that to enhance it. I really like how these turned out. These I'm keeping for myself since I have dyed the yarn. I think I have another skein of this in my stash, so I may crank that one up and make a pair for somebody else. But she also made us a hat. Somehow she did an offset on the hat. I don't know how she did it, or maybe she has a bigger, no, the hat ones weren't out yet. I don't know how she did it, but she also made us a hat on her sock machine with our socks. But there was enough left over to make the tube, and there was enough in the tube to actually make a full pair of socks. So I'm very pleased with this. Again, I did 2x2 cuffs for, I think, 20 or 25 rounds. I did the rounded toe, and I did the umbrella heel. So the heels, toes, and cuffs, with the way this was cranked up, I was able to stick with my 2.25 millimeter needles to finish that up. And these are super soft, and I can't wait to wear them. Hey friends, Editing Dorothy here. I just wanted to update you because I wound up not keeping those green and purple socks for myself that I had dyed. I wound up giving them to my friend Ellen. Hi, Ellen. She was in New Zealand the last couple of weeks visiting family, and she did me a huge favor while she was out there. She picked up a few items that I can't get back here in the States, and she brought me some New Zealand yarn and some chocolates. So this was my way of a little thank you for going the extra mile and doing me a favor while she was in New Zealand. Then I cranked up, this is leftover yarn from String Theory. Let me just check. Where are my socks? Yes, String Theory Colorworks Continent Self-Striping. This was Event Horizon. I have a pair of these for myself. So with these leftovers, I made a pair of shorties for one of my nieces. This will be their Christmas gift. The heels, toes, and cuffs, I used a Desert Vista Dye Works that I had purchased in the solid color black. And these are going to go to, again, one of my nieces that is down here. This is going to be part of her Christmas gift. And then the last fully finished pair I have were, again, another pair. The yarn was another yarn from String Theory. This was called Phosphorus. These, again, are for me. The first pair I made in this colorway I had given to one of my nieces because they were too small for me. So these are mine. Again, I used the Desert Vista Dye Works black because I had bought a full skein in the black for the purpose of doing heels, toes, and cuffs. Again, the rounded afterthought toe, the umbrella heel, 2x2 cuffs for approximately 20 rounds. And then I did Jenny's super stretchy bind off. I know some people have issue with that bind off. I don't, because, you know, once it's around my sock, once it's around my foot and calf, it gets all stretched out and I don't have to worry about it. So then I have a bunch of whips to share with you. So let's move on to the whips. So I don't know if people would consider these whips or hose because they are pretty much half done. So two I'm going to share are the felted tulip bowl. They are completed, but they are not felted. So this, I used some Malabrigo Rasta. Yes, Malabrigo Rasta that I had in my stash. I don't know why I had so much bulky yarn in my stash. I'm not a big bulky yarn user, and it was probably the colors that got me. So here is one. Unfortunately, one skein of Malabrigo Rasta is not enough for this pattern. It's just slightly short. So I wound up shortening this one. So when it gets felted, it will be slightly shorter than what it should be. And then so when I made this shorter, I wound up having a little bit left over. And so I used it for the extra section in my teal feather one. I just made two little stripes here in the center. So I can't wait to get this one felted. And then since this was supposed to be kind of like flower edgings, all I did was I just wove some up and down the little remnants that I had left over to sort of make like the center of a flower petal. I almost couldn't remember that. So these just need to be felted down. Hopefully I will get them done within the next 2 weeks and can share the felted bowls during my next episode. So this was, I need to go put it in Ravelry, but I did make one that I shared in my last episode. It's the Small Tulip Felted Bowl by Cindy Pilon, or Pilon. I'm not quite sure. It was an $8 pattern. And because I didn't have enough yarn, I wound up just doing 4 petals on this one instead of 5. So it's going to wind up being a little bit shorter, a little bit narrower, and only with 4 petals. But I love the colors in this one. This is Arco Iris. It's one of my favorite colors that they do. And then I managed to use the leftover Arco Iris with my teal feather. And this one does have 5 petals. So this was knit exactly to pattern. I will probably not be making more of these for a while because knitting on big yarn with big needles is not something my hands like very much. Although I think the finished objects are going to be very, very nice. So again, those were small tulip felted bowls. Excuse me. So now I'm going to share a whole bunch of hose. These are socks that I have completed from my tubes that still need heels because I haven't determined who is going to get them. So the first up we have is a Desert Vista Dye Works leftover. This was Coyote in the Wild, I think. And this time I decided to use one of my skeins that I bought from Hobie. This is Happy Feet. And it just went so well with the color that is in these stripes. So I did 2x2 ribbing at the top for, I think it was 25 rounds. Again, I did the rounded toes. I did mark where the edgings would be. I think that these are going to one of my nieces, so I know that my heels are going to go in right here. I already have them marked off. So these will be most likely finished during the next, or for the next episode, I should say. Not during, but for. Then I used that same color for heels and toes on this yarn, which is again another Desert Vista Dye Works Vizio yarn. And this colorway is, I think it's Girls Rule the World. So I have not decided who these will go to, so I don't have heels marked off. But again, we did rounded toes, 2x2 cuff, and this one I think I did about 20 rounds for the cuffs, because if someone has bigger feet, these are going to be kind of shorty socks. But lots of fun getting these finished, or almost finished. This is a skein that I have had in my stash for a while, so these are for me. They are Hedgehog Fibers, Boombox colorway in her, I think it's called Twist Fly Base? No, Twist Base, which is a BFL nylon base. And then I had this bright blue mini that, and I know it's showing up slightly purple on the camera, but it is a very, very bright royal blue. I don't know if this is going to be enough to put in heels though, because this was only a 20 gram mini. So these I'm keeping for myself as well. They're a little bit thicker than my normal socks. I guess BFL is just slightly a thicker base. So I will probably wind up doing the heels on this one 2 at a time so that I can finish using this. If I need to add another color, they will be even at the heels. But I love all the bright, beautiful speckles that are in this yarn. Again, this is Hedgehog Fibers and the colorway is Boombox. Then I used up the rest of another Desert Vista Dye Works, which was Sealed with a Kiss. I used one pink mini to do the toes and the cuffs. I did 2x2 cuff. I think that's about 25 rounds. Again, the rounded toe. These are going to go to one of my nieces. Since I do not have enough in this hot pink, I found this lighter pink that sort of matches the lighter pink that's in there. Not exactly, but, and so this will be the heels when I get to this sock. Yes, I did a lot of sock knitting in Florida. A lot. And then this one, I had, so this is a yarn that I picked up from the Maryland Alpaca Fiber Festival quite a number of years ago. It was from Grindstone Ridge Farms, and it's a Superwash BFL 25% nylon sock yarn. There was no colorway name, so I just called it Autumn. Isn't that gorgeous? Not usually my colors, but I was just so drawn to it. It's just so beautiful. And then again, I used a 50-gram skein of sock yarn that I had purchased from Hobie. This time I did a 1x1 cuff for about 20 rows. And then I did the rounded toe heels. I put a progress keeper on the right side so I know which side was the beginning of the round. And not sure who these are going to go to, so no heel marks have been made, but I still have this much, so this will be good for probably at least another pair of socks if I need that color. And that is the end, right? So that is the end of all my hose. That was all the sock knitting I did in 2.5 weeks of dealing with the medical situation and family. So at least I have several Christmas projects done. That's a plus. So next up, I have a couple of shawls or little neckerchief style scarves that I started as I was going through some of my yarns. First up, I think this is the Buzz Scarf. Yes. So this is the Buzz Scarf by Sweater Freak. This stitch is very reminiscent of the Chinese Waves dishcloth pattern. This is a skein that I had in my stash that was already caked up. It is Avalon Springs Farms Pendragon yarn. They are a local to-be dyer in Maryland. This is a sport weight yarn that's got 309 yards. And the colorway is From the Ancients. So it is a tad more yardage than the pattern calls for. I'm not sure if I'm going to use the whole skein for this because this might make way too long of a little neckerchief style scarf. But I love it. I love the colors. It's going to be so pretty, a nice accent scarf. And actually, if it's long enough, since it is tapered at the end, I could just wear it like a long scarf like that when I have any button downs that I'm wearing. I'm using my signature needles in, can I read this morning? US 6s, 4.0 millimeters. And my beautiful point protectors, not my circus, not my monkeys. That is a well-used statement at my job between me and my media assistant, whom was such a dear to me, checked on me almost every single day that I was in Florida. It's really good, even if you are working in a crappy environment, to have a coworker who goes above and beyond with checking in with you when something like this happens. But this was, when I saw these, I simply had to buy them because that is our motto this year, because we decided we were not going to take on other people's jobs anymore. Not my monkey, not my not my monkey, not my circus, not my monkey, not my circus. I can't even tell you how many times we've said that. So this is a nice full skein. Still, it is, I don't think I shared, it is 100% superwash merino wool. And I just love the variegation that is in this purple yarn. So pretty. If I have enough left over, I may use it in a hat to go with this. Or, ooh, I could possibly put tassels. Make some tassels to put on the end. I don't know. We will see when it is finished. But this is where I was last time I shared this project with you all. I had basically just started, and now I have several, so what is that? Probably 1.5 feet more done. So let me move that progress keeper up, because who knows if this will get done by the next episode or not. But here we go. I've just put it up to the top here. So next I share, you will see the amount of progress that I've made. This is a super easy pattern. I can't remember if it's a free pattern or not. I don't think it was. Let me check. No, it was a $7 pattern. And again, it has the I-cord edging as you knit it. I would definitely say this could be a TV knit because it's a simple once you get past the increases, it's a simple 4-row repeat. And if you know how to read your knitting, it's very easy to know which row you're on because it's just an offset. Okay. Super duper love this. It feels just, oh, it feels so squishy and soft. I don't know if this is going to be for me or if it's going to go in the gift box. More than likely it's going to go in the gift box because I have so many shawls already. Shawls, scarves, all that fun stuff. And it's in a lovely handy dandy Ziploc bag because, like I said, the skein was already caked up and in my stash, and it was being protected in plastic bags because my stash used to be housed in my basement. Next up, again, in a lovely designer plastic bag made by, oh, it doesn't say, probably Ziploc. So next up is the Mara Shawl by Audrey Borrego. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. It uses fingering weight. So if you have a half skein of fingering weight, well, I shouldn't say that. It calls for, depending upon what size you want to make, between 262 yards to 437 yards. So if you want a smaller scarf and you have approximately a little bit more than half a skein left over, you could. Or if you have a whole skein, you could do a whole skein. I am using Dragonfly fibers. They're Pixie base, which is a single ply base. And the colorway is, I think it's called Eastern Bluebird. So here I was last time I shared it with you, where I had pretty much just started. I had a weekend of cast-on-itis when I found all these skeins already caked up. And I managed to knit all the way up here. So let me move my stitch marker as I am thinking about it. It is a fairly simple repeat. Once you do there are 4 charts to this pattern. There is the beginning chart, which I think went up to about here. And then there's a steady increase chart, which is the center here. It's a 16 row chart repeat. But once you have the pattern down, it's very easily memorized because it is very simple stitches. And it's just enough to keep you interested and going. It's not the monotonous of stockinette and garter, but you know, there's a couple of rows that are eyelet, there's a couple of rows that are ribbing, there are a couple of garter rows, and a couple of stockinette rows. This skein was already split in half, so I am going as far as I can on the first half. This is what I have left, so I'm thinking maybe 1 or 2 more repeats might finish this up, and then I will move on to chart C, where I start decreasing. And then the last chart is like the final decreases all the way to the bottom. Colorway is very interesting. There's the royal navy blue with some coppery oranges in there. It's so interesting how it does a flashing depending upon the stitches, but again, it's going to be, you know, wrapped around your neck, so you're not really going to see it. I just have, I moved this stitch marker up just as a reminder that this is the front. I'm using my signature needles that are 3.5 millimeters, so they are a size US 4. And then I have lovely stitch stoppers that my friend Joan gave me at our last special retreat. Gotta love it. And so when this gets done, this will also go into the gift box so that I can gift it out around probably Christmas time. Not sure who it's going to go to, but I enjoy knitting. I cannot sit on my couch and not knit. I learned that the hard way when pretty sure I fractured my wrist 2 years ago, and I could not knit or crochet for almost a month. And then when I started, I could only do it for a few minutes. So that was grueling to learn that I've gotten just so used to every time I sit down, I'm knitting, and realizing how much you do that when you suddenly can't. So I wind up knitting when I have a skein or two that I'm not going to be putting into a garment or anything special, I make hats. I donate hats to local charities. I donate hats. We do a hat collection for a local Title I school for the kids. And then I make all these little scarves and things to put in a gift basket for whenever I need a little something special to give away. And then the last scarf that I'm going to share that is on my needles that I've been working on is the Hitchhiker. And I am using Neighborhood Fibers Rustic Fingering, which again is another single ply yarn. The color is Sanctuary City. And I have 2 skeins of it. I know the pattern really only calls for 1 skein, but I had the 2 skeins were already caked up in my stash. This is where I was last time I shared it. I had just started it. Here's where I am now. I am knitting this on a US 2.5 3 millimeter needle. These are my, what are these? I think these are Knitter's Pride Carbon needles. And then I have my lovely point protectors that my friend Judy gave me. Yes, we have a group of highly fluent, sarcastic people, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So I will continue to go on this. This is a lovely item to knit on when I am catching up on YouTube podcasts, especially now since I've pretty much missed about 3 weeks. I'm trying to catch up desperately with all of my faves, and we will go until I feel it is long enough. I haven't decided if I'm keeping this one for myself or if I'm going to gift it to my sister, because these are definitely her colors, but I don't know if she needs another scarf. She has one that I made for her a number of years ago that she absolutely loves. It is definitely in her beach colors. She wears it all the time. She lets me know that she still gets lots of compliments on it. But this is a nice thinner scarf. This is made with fingering weight. I believe it calls for, pattern actually calls for 500 yards. So the Hitchhikers by Martina Bem. I hope I said that right. So yes, the actual pattern itself calls for 569 to 574 yards. I have made this pattern several times with single skeins. So this time, now that I actually have 2 skeins, I will probably knit it to the exact size and compare them to my others. But it's super squishy. I love the feel of single ply yarn. I just have no idea how well it's going to last. But I still have all of this to go through. I'm not even through the first skein yet. I don't know why they were all, this one skein was all cut up. I think I got this from, a swap. So So that is the last shawl that I have on my needles. So I will share the rest of the socks that I had tubed up. This was another hedgehog fiber. I'm getting ready to get it started. This is their twist sock base, which is the BFL nylon. 80% BFL, 20% nylon. Machine washable, so it must be superwash BFL. And the color is Fly. So it has a beautiful pastel-y green background. It's not quite showing up. It's looking more bluish on the screen, but then it has all the little speckles of all these bright, beautiful colors. I have this purple. I thought it would go beautifully with it. And hopefully it is enough to do all three: toes, heels, and cuffs. So this is the waist yarn that I have between each. And then my last two are these right here. This is the center one, is from Arctic. I squeezed it in here. Arctic Crafts from Binta, who also has a YouTube podcast. And this is a Poledale wool I've never used before, never heard of it. 80% Poledale, 20% nylon. It was a 50-gram skein, and I found a pretty green in my minis that will go along with it. The colorway is called Spring Fling. It is a super wash, so that's good. I'm going to stick that back in there so that when I put it on Ravelry, I will remember which base it was. And then this Outfly base is a hedgehog fiber sock base, which is 90% superwash merino and 10% nylon. This colorway is called Vengeance. And I thought that pretty orchid color would go well with it. And hopefully, I believe that's a mini that I dyed myself. And hopefully that will be enough to do all three: heels, toes, and cuffs. So there we go. And the last, so here is my sock tube that I cranked out on my Erlbacher. I pick up and separate. I usually, when I do my, I started when I started doing afterthought heels, I would pick up all my stitches with a size 0 or double, I think these actually might be 00 needles, because it's so much easier to pick up stitches on both sides of a row and then be able to get the row in between and undo it so that they are on the needles. And then as I knit, I will transfer it onto a 1.25 millimeter needle. So this is an extra long tube because I used all of it. So I'm not sure if these will be one, because I think even for me, and I have a size 10 foot, this is a little too much. But we'll see. I'm not sure if I'm keeping these for myself or if these will go in the gift box, since I do not have a pair in this color. I don't even remember what I used this color in that I caked it up for. Hi friends, editing me here again. Turns out that because I've been away for so long, I had so much to share with you guys that I recorded almost 2.5 hours worth of video. And I don't want to share and post and put you guys through that. So I'm going to end the first part here. I did attempt to cut out as much of my extra sharing and oversharing that I did with the situation that was going on with my parents to give you just the bare highlights of what was going on. But even that was much longer than I anticipated. So I'm going to cut this off here. I'm going to finish editing it and post it up for you guys to watch. And then I'm going to continue to edit the rest of it and post it probably in another day or two. Okay? All right. Bye-bye.